10 spine-chilling encounters from the cursed Appalachian Mountains, terrifying secrets revealed. The air hangs heavy with dread in the small Appalachian town of Cedar Hollow. Locals whisper about the mountains, steeped in darkness and calamity. Once innocent children's stories twist into tales of lost souls, sinister shadows creeping through the trees, and things that go bump in the night. They speak of the cursed land where spirits roam, seeking revenge for the sins of the past. Every winter, haunted echoes drift down, chilling every bone in your body, as if warning you to stay away. And if you dare venture too far into the woods, you might just become another ghost story. Sarah, a single mother working nights at the diner, knows these stories all too well. They gnaw at her mind as she pours coffee to the late-night crowds. The diner hums with chatter, laughter, the clinking of forks and the sizzle of frying bacon, offering a brief reprieve from her grief. Yet, every time the door swings open to reveal the ink-black night, a shiver runs down her spine. Something feels amiss, a prickling sensation that she's not alone. Staring out the window, she can't shake the feeling that she's being watched by those unseen eyes lurking in the fog-drenched trees. Tonight, she tidies up after the last customer, mind racing, when she ascends to the attic. The air grows thick as she searches the aged floorboards, each creak a reminder of everything she has lost and the burdens she bears. Then, amidst forgotten relics, she discovers a dusty old photograph. As she wipes the grime off, a knot tightens in her stomach. The young man resembles her late husband, grinning by the side of the sheriff. Confusion muddles her thoughts. The sheriff, a man hailed as a protector, an enigma cloaked in authority, holds sinister connotations now that as Sarah uncovers more about her husband's life, whispers from the diner echo in her mind, secrets woven into the fabric of the community. The sheriff is not just a lawman but a gatekeeper of the town's history, a figure who silences the haunting stories of those who disappeared. Her discovery sends chills down her spine, fear ramping up with each revelation. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she questions the safety of the town and the integrity of the sheriff, the warmth she once felt dissipates. Cold shoulders replace supportive smiles, the friendly faces shift to wary glances. Whispers behind her back transform into accusations, suspicions. Late-night shifts at the diner morph into a living nightmare, fear thrumming like a restless current. Rumors of the missing grow louder, and Sarah's name becomes entangled in the dark tapestry of secrets. One stormy night, a local man vanishes without a trace. Chaos erupts in Cedar Hollow, and unfounded suspicion turns its icy grip on Sarah. Desperation fuels her drive to uncover the sheriff's corruption, but each step feels perilous, as if the ground could swallow her whole. The photograph, a ghost of her husband's past, now serves as a tether to the secrets that bind this town in fear. Just as she unravels a pivotal connection, an anonymous note slips under her door, sending a jolt of terror through her veins. Some truths are better left buried. The mountain shadows loom closer, tongues of darkness licking at the edges of her sanity. Standing in the twilight of revelation and safety, she must decide: can she face the implications of her inquiries, or will she be consumed by the very secrets she sought to unearth? The woods call to her, echoing a chilling question: is the truth worth losing everything? The very walls of Cedar Hollow seem to tremble with anticipation, vibrating under the weight of Sarah's discovery. The note haunted her every thought, the words reverberating in her mind. Shadows flickered in the corners of her vision as she tried to suppress the rising tide of panic clawing at her insides. Was the sheriff truly involved? Or was this a deep-rooted conspiracy that had ensnared the entire town? She needed answers, and with a resolve that bore the weight of desperation, she took the photograph from its resting place on the attic floor and tucked it into her pocket. The diner felt like a sanctuary compared to the oppressive silence of her home. With each step back to work, dark tendrils of apprehension curled around her heart. The diner was bustling, yet something felt ominously off. The usual banter of friends and neighbors was strained. Conversation stuttered and faded whenever she approached. But Sarah couldn't afford to dwell on that. She poured coffee and cleared plates with a practiced ease, but restless eyes darted to the door waiting, watching. "Did you hear about Charlie?" A voice drifted, brittle with fear and intrigue. "What if he asked the next one?" Another voice answered, trembling. Her stomach knotted. Charlie was the latest victim, and now suspicion was spiraling straight into her direction. The room dimmed as she overheard fragments of whispered accusations. "She's been asking too many questions. Her husband was close with the sheriff." The chill that ran down her spine felt like ice water coursing through her veins. Taking a breath, she decided to confront the unease. Her nerves battled fear as she approached a group of regulars. "What do you know about the sheriff? About the disappearances?" They fell silent, eyes wide, then quickly glanced at each other, a silent understanding that their silence held more weight than the truth. "Best not to get involved, Sarah," muttered a man with a haggard face. "Some things are safer left alone." The weight of his words pressed down like lead. Tension crackled in the air, the kind that hung thick before a storm. The door swung open, rattling her focus, allowing a gust of wind that carried the scent of loamy earth and despair. She turned to see Sheriff Lawson stride in, his face a mask of calmness but his eyes like storm clouds brewing with latent menace. "I hope you're not upsetting our good folks, Miss Sarah," he said, a mocking smile curving his lips. Her heart pounded as she drank in the sight of him. There was something undeniably chilling about a man in power who understood the cracks of fear he could manipulate. "I was just what? Asking questions you shouldn't. You'd best be careful. You know what they say about curiosity." He trailed off, eyes narrowing dangerously. She felt a surge of defiance, driven by a mixture of rage and desperation. "What happened to Charlie? Why are people disappearing, Sheriff? You're supposed to protect us, not scare us." His expression hardened, abruptly shifting from playful to lethal. "I'm always protecting Cedar Hollow, Sarah. In ways you might never understand." With those final words, he turned on his heel, leaving her breathless, the grip on her emotions tightening like a vice. Later that night, her thoughts raced like wild animals. The photograph became her only anchor against the encroaching dark. If she could just learn more. As she slipped into a restless sleep, shadows flickered, visions of her husband leaning against the sheriff, their eyes glossed over with secrets best left untouched. But those secrets begged to be unearthed, like a precious treasure hidden beneath layers of dirt. Dread filled her as the wind howled outside, chilling her to the bone. The woods were calling again, whispering of truths that wanted to break free. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the night, jolting her upright. What was that? Her heart raced, answering the call for answers. Even when fear urged her to flee, she stood at the edge of her door, trembling, knowing she had to investigate. Would this be the night that changed everything? Would she discover the path to truth, or walk straight into a nightmare where she might not return? The darkness beckoned with a sinister promise, and her next steps could seal her fate. The night air was thick, alive with unsettling sounds that seemed to pulse from the very shadows. Each rustle beyond her door sent jolts of adrenaline coursing through Sarah. She hesitated, listening intently for another clue, another whisper of impending horror that filled the silence like smoke. The crash had come from the woods, sharp, sudden, and unmistakable. Taking a shaky breath, she stepped outside, the chill of the night wrapping around her like a ghostly embrace. The moon hung high, illuminating the path to the tree line, casting eerie shapes that flickered like memories just out of reach. With every step, the ground crunched underfoot, a cruel reminder of her solitude in the suffocating darkness. Twigs snapped nearby, and a finger of cold dread crawled up her spine. This was no ordinary night. The woods were alive, breathing, waiting. Sarah's heart hammered louder, drowning out the sounds of her surroundings as she walked deeper into the dark realm. "Charlie," she whispered, the name unraveling into the stillness, clashing with the silence that pressed down around her. Had she come this far only to find another victim? Panic bubbled in her chest, but still, she pressed on. Answers lay buried here among the trees, shackled by the brutality of the night. The air grew thicker, heavy with something foul. With each breath she took, the lingering taste of decay clawed at her throat. Something was wrong. The smell sharpened her senses, cutting through her fear like a knife. Sarah covered her mouth, struggling to focus her thoughts. The woods seemed to swirl around her, an entity within itself, as if watching her every move. A flash of movement caught her eye from the corner of the grove. Desperation urged her forward, but something held her back. She fought against it, pushing through every instinct that screamed for her to turn and run. "Hello?" she called out, voice trembling against the shadows. "Is someone there?" Silence hung thick as fog. Then, faintly, came the sound of muffled sobs. It pierced through the night, a chilling reminder of despair that echoed her own fears. She followed the sound, heart racing, dread pulling her closer to the source. "Charlie?" She ventured again, praying for a response, praying for safety. The sobs grew louder, more frantic. They called out to her, begging for intervention, but an unsettling thought crept into her mind: what if he was not alone? As she emerged into a clearing, the moonlight revealed a sight that brought her heart to a standstill. There, in the center, stood a figure with their back to her, swaying gently, arms hanging slack at their sides. The ground around them was smeared with dark stains that crushed her spirit. "Charlie!" she cried, rushing closer. But as the figure turned, her blood ran cold. It wasn't Charlie. The face was pale, twisted in desperation, eyes wide, reflecting terror sharper than any blade. It was a stranger. "Run!" the figure rasped, voice hoarse and broken. "He's coming!" Run! Before she could respond, shadows danced behind the stranger, sliding in the darkness like serpents. Sarah's instincts kicked in. She turned to flee, but the air shifted, thickening as something loomed over her, heavy and oppressive. "Didn't I warn you?" A familiar voice boomed, filled with malice. It was Sheriff Lawson, stepping from the shadows with an unnatural ease, face twisted in a grin that made her stomach churn. "You should have stayed away, dear Sarah." Fear surged through her, drowning out reason. She was trapped, caught in a web spun from lies, and the only thing holding her together was a desperate plea for survival. She spun around, legs pumping hard against the earth, as the moonlight flickered behind her, and the darkness moved in a predatory fashion. Would she escape his grasp? Or had she unwittingly walked into the very heart of Cedar Hollow's nightmare? The answer lay just beyond the shadows, and with every heartbeat, the need to confront it urged her closer, whether she wanted to or not. But as the trees closed in behind her, one question lingered in her mind: what was the sheriff truly protecting? Sarah's feet pounded against the ground, each step tearing through the oppressive darkness that enveloped her. Panic surged in her chest, a relentless drumbeat urging her to flee. Sheriff Lawson's laughter echoed behind her, clawing at her resolve. The trees closed in as if they had minds of their own, arms stretching outward to grasp her, to hold her back. She darted into the labyrinth of trunks, branches curling like skeletal fingers above her, blocking out the moonlight. She could hear his footsteps, too close, too deliberate. She had to get away. "Where are you going, Sarah?" The sheriff's voice called, taunting and smooth. "You can't hide from me. I always find what I'm looking for." Her heart raced faster. The woods were no longer just trees and shadows, they were a maze of horror, an extension of his twisted delight. She had stumbled into something far more sinister than she ever could have imagined. Up ahead, through a clump of underbrush, Sarah spotted a narrow path winding between the trees. Desperation clawed at her gut, urging her forward. She pushed through the thicket, ignoring the sharp pricks of branches against her skin. The sobs of the stranger echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder that there was something terrible going on in these woods. "Charlie!" she called out one more time, voice cracking. No answer came, just more whispering wind. Suddenly, a rustle to her left caught her attention. A dark shape flitted between the trees. She paused, heart freezing in her chest. The air was still, the world holding its breath. What lurked in the shadows? Instinct kicked in again. She turned and ran, fear propelling her faster. Branches scraped her arms, tearing her clothes, but she couldn't stop. She sensed something hunting her, an oppressive weight trailing close behind. A sudden flash of movement made her jerk her head back. There it was, a dark shadow lunging toward her, a blurred silhouette pursuing her like a predator. The path twisted, and she stumbled, falling hard. Pain shot up her leg, but she pushed through it, scrambling to her feet. She couldn't afford to look back, she could sense it getting closer. Winded, gasping for air, she spotted a peculiar light flickering ahead. Hope ignited within her, a way out, a safe haven. She surged toward it, each step fueled by raw desperation. As she closed the distance, the light morphed into the entrance of what appeared to be an ancient cabin, half hidden beneath a tangle of foliage. "Help!" she screamed, throwing open the door. The hinges groaned, echoing into the night. The cabin loomed like a dark sentinel, oversized shadows dancing on the walls as she rushed inside. She slammed the door shut behind her, heart racing as she pressed against it, panting. The room was filled with an overwhelming scent of mold and damp wood. Desperately, Sarah scanned the cramped interior, searching for something, anything, to defend herself. Her eyes landed on an old hunting rifle mounted on the wall, faded but still potent. She rushed toward it, hands trembling as she grabbed the cold metal, a sense of purpose rising within her. Would this be enough to keep the darkness at bay? A knocking shattered her thoughts, rhythmically tapping at the door, followed by Sheriff Lawson's voice. "I know you're in there, Sarah. You can't escape. You belong to these woods now. They've all been waiting for you." A shudder ran through her. What did he mean? And who was waiting for her? She glanced through the grimy window, seeing nothing but blackness and the pulse of a growing storm. The trees seemed to sway more violently, as if they were alive in their own right. The air buzzed, thick with anticipation. If she didn't find a way out, it wouldn't just be about survival. It would be a reckoning, a confrontation with the unknown forces that had twisted Cedar Hollow into something horrifying. As Lawson's shadow danced closer, the realization struck her: she wasn't just running from the sheriff. She was running from everything Cedar Hollow had become. With trembling hands, Sarah took aim, heart pounding with dread and determination. Would she be able to hold her ground when all else was lost? The answer lurked beyond the door, and with every passing moment, she was drawn into a darkness more profound than the woods themselves. The knocking grew louder, a persistent reminder that she was not alone. Each thud against the cabin door seemed to echo the thundering pulse in her ears. Sarah's breath quickened as she pressed her back against the wooden planks, the rifle heavy in her hands. Anxiety surged through her, intertwining with the dread that coiled tight in her stomach. "Come out, Sarah." Sheriff Lawson's voice slipped through the cracks in the door like oil, slick and unsettling. "Don't make this hard for yourself." With each syllable, a chill slid down her spine. She could almost hear the sinister smirk behind his words. The memories of Charlie's cries filled her mind, a desperate plea for help lost to the night. Had he been taken by this monster? The air in the cabin was thick, stale, almost suffocating. Shadows clung to the corners, flickering in and out of view, making her feel like the walls were closing in. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. Sarah wasn't another victim. Not today. She moved slowly, her heartbeat pounding loudly in her ears, advancing toward the single window in the cabin. The faint light flickering from outside illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. She risked a glance outside. What she saw made her blood run cold. The woods were alive, or at least they seemed to be. Shapes moved among the trees, figures wrapped in darkness, twisted and deformed. They swayed in tandem, an eerie dance, almost beckoning. A roar of wind filled the air, and for an instant, she could have sworn they were whispering her name. "Get out, join us." She stumbled back from the window, her head reeling. The voices. They were faint, but they scared her more than anything in her life. Sarah Lawson continued, the knocking shifting to something far more sinister, scraping, clawing, as if he were trying to pry open the door. "You know what lies out there. Let me help you." Desperation clawed at her thoughts, but she couldn't accept his help. Not when it had to do with whatever twisted fate awaited her outside. She glanced back at the rifle, the cold metal a reminder that she needed to make a choice: fight or flee. As if sensing her turmoil, the voices from the woods grew louder, filling the cabin with a haunting chorus, shifting her focus. This wasn't just about Lawson anymore, it was a battle against something ancient and insatiable. The woods were calling to her, inviting her to join whatever horrors thrived just beyond. She shivered and turned to the rifle. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a lifeline, a last stand against the dark forces of Cedar Hollow. She had to clear her mind and strengthen her resolve. "Do you hear them, Sheriff?" she shouted back, feeling a spark of courage. "You think I'll just open the door and let you in?" Laughter rang out, sharp and horrific, as the knocking ceased only for a moment. Then she heard a low, guttural growl from right outside her window that sent shards of panic straight into her heart. Something sinister was lurking just beyond the walls, and now the question nagged at her: what if Sheriff Lawson was not the only danger out there? A deep dread settled over her, like a thick fog. She took a deep breath, steadying her hands on the rifle. She understood now, the forest had claimed others before her, and it hungered for her next. But whether the sheriff was her enemy or a tool of her salvation remained unanswered. The wood beneath her feet creaked ominously, sending her pulse into a frenzied race. She still had a decision to make. A loud crash erupted from the door, ripping off the hinges. The door flew open, and standing there was the sheriff, his smile smeared with the shadows of the woods, eyes swirling with something ancient and terrifying. "Welcome home, Sarah," he whispered, his voice a twisted melody. Her heart pounded violently as she aimed the rifle, the weight of the moment crashing down on her. Would she pull the trigger? Or was it already too late? The darkness had found her, and now she had to face it. What would she do when the true nature of Cedar Hollow unveiled itself? A heartbeat echoed in the silence that followed the sheriff's horrifying greeting. Every nerve in Sarah's body screamed at her to run, but her instincts held her frozen. The rifle felt heavy in her hands, but she couldn't let that stop her. "Get away from me!" she shouted, her voice trembling but defiant. Sheriff Lawson took a step inside, the cabin's dim light casting disturbing shadows over his face. "You should listen, Sarah. They're hungry." His head tilted slightly, a grotesque imitation of a concerned friend. The growl from outside grew raspy and wild, blending with the whispering voices that danced on the edges of her consciousness. "Join us," they hissed, wrapping around her like cold, clammy hands. "Stay back," she yelled, her voice getting weaker with each passing second. She needed to think, but the weight of the sheriff's gaze threatened to pull her into a nightmare she had only just begun to comprehend. Behind him, the woods seemed to shift, the darkness pulsing as though alive. Sarah quickly shifted the rifle, pointing it at the sheriff's twisted smile. "What do you want from me?" He chuckled softly, leaning inch by inch closer. "I want you to understand. This isn't just about survival, it's about awakening." Awakening? A sick feeling turned in her stomach. What had he done? What did you want with Charlie? Charlie. His eyes glimmered with an unsettling delight. He was merely the first. The woods have chosen you, Sarah. They're tired of waiting. The cabin walls seemed to twist under the weight of their conversation. She could almost feel the tendrils of the woods slithering through the cracks, seeking entry, seeking her. What do you mean, chosen? Panic clawed at her throat. I'm not one of them. Oh, but you are. He creaked, a low sinister laugh bubbling from deep within. With a sudden, sharp movement, he lunged for her. Sarah pulled the trigger, the deafening blast ricocheting off the walls. The bullet tore through the air, striking Lawson in the shoulder. He staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he grinned wider, revealing teeth stained by darkness. "Just a scratch," he rasped, shockingly unfazed. "You'll need to do better than that." Her heart sank, dread swelling within her like a storm on the horizon. She stumbled back, seeking a way out. The cabin felt like a trap, suffocating. The whispers from the woods intensified, now a frantic plea mingled with anger. They wanted her. "Run, Sarah!" The command rang clear within her mind, almost as if the voices had momentarily broken their sinister chant. She glanced toward the wide-open door, but she hesitated. What lay beyond the threshold? "Stay with me," Lawson called, advancing painfully slow, the dark energy swirling around him. "You can't escape what you are." The ground beneath her shook, and she knew the woods would come for her if she lingered. Desperation pulsed through her veins. With a sudden burst of determination, she dashed toward the door, her pulse roaring in her ears. The shadows seemed to reach out, grasping at her ankles, but she broke free, tossing herself into the night. The forest engulfed her instantly. The air was thick with humidity, and branches clawed her as she ran, the weight of the darkness heavy behind her. Was it too late? A thunderous growl erupted, shaking the ground beneath her, and she risked a glance back. Lawson was a silhouette against the cabin door, but something else was emerging behind him from the shadows, a colossal, monstrous shape, flickering like a shadow. "Sarah," it roared, a voice as deep as the earth itself. "You belong to us now." Her blood ran cold. The chaos of the forest enveloped her as she sprinted deeper into the darkness, the urge to scream clawing at her throat. The true terror of Cedar Hollow was just awakening, and she was its target. What sinister fate awaited her in the depths of the woods? Would escape even be possible? Branches whipped against Sarah's face like the claws of a phantom creature as she fled through the suffocating darkness. Each breath felt like fire burning in her lungs, desperation fueling her flight. The growls and whispers behind her merged into a cacophony of madness. They were close, too close. "Run!" she urged herself, but the words echoed hollowly in the vast expanse of the night. The trees towered over her, wiry fingers stretching into the sky. With each step, the soil beneath her squelched and shifted, seeming to conspire against her. Then, out of the shadows, something leapt past her, a flicker of movement ripping through her periphery. She hardly dared to look, afraid of what she might see, but the instinct to sprint faster surged within her. She could feel the eyes, many eyes watching, waiting for her to falter. "Just keep moving," she whispered, trying to silence the weighty fear coiling around her, but as she angled deeper into the woods, she heard it again. "Sarah," the voice rolled through the trees, deeper than the earth itself, curling around her heart like a vice. It was no longer just Lawson, it was something worse, something ancient and hungry. Tears of terror prickled her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had to focus. The memory of the sheriff's twisted grin flashed in her mind. What did he mean by awakening? Was this some sort of twisted initiation, the woods choosing her as its vessel? A sudden scrabble echoed underfoot, snapping her out of her thoughts. She stumbled, barely catching herself before crashing into a thick cluster of roots. Panic surged as she glanced back. Nothing. Was it just her mind playing tricks? She took a shaky breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. A low rumble reverberated from the direction of the cabin, a primal sound that beckoned her to return. "Don't give in," she urged herself, forcing her legs to move again, but the air shifted, thickening as shadows danced in the corners of her vision. Whispers seeped through the trees, words too slurred to grasp, yet they felt undeniably clear. "Join us." Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her ankle. She cried out as she stumbled forward, scraping her palms against the rugged earth. Gritting her teeth, she twisted to see what had snagged her. Roots, gnarly and thick, coiling around her leg like serpents, pulsed with a life of their own. "Get off!" she screamed, clawing at the roots as they tightened, pulling her toward the ground. With every ounce of strength, she kicked and writhed, dislodging herself finally from their grasp, her heart racing faster than she thought possible. Just as she regained her footing, a rustling sound erupted to her right, leaves snapping underfoot. She froze once more, catching sight of a shadow weaving through the trees. A figure, hunched and grotesque, moved with unnatural speed. Its eyes glowed, two embers piercing the night. "Sarah," it crooned, the voice a sickly sweet echo of Lawson's. "You will not escape us, we are one." She turned on her heel, terror breaking her hesitation. But the woods twisted around her, leading her deeper into a labyrinth from which she might never find her way out. Then, she noticed a dull light flickering in the distance, a beacon that pierced the despairing darkness. Hope ignited inside her, but she hesitated. What awaited her at the light? Friends or foes? "Run!" urged a voice in her head, louder now. She charged towards the light, heart racing, each step a battle against the pull of what lurked behind her. Could it truly be salvation? Or was it merely the next trap in an unending cycle? She kept her breath as she hurtled towards the glow, clutching the rifle tightly. What awaited her beyond that threshold could seal her fate for better or worse. The glow ahead shimmered like a mirage, flickering uncertainly among the dense trees. With each harrowing breath, Sarah pushed herself forward, fueled by the uncertainty of freedom or despair that lay before her. The whispers intensified, weaving through the branches, urging her to pause, to reconsider. "Come back, Sarah," it was a siren's call painted with malice. The shadows behind her stirred, and she felt their hunger clawing at her back. The light didn't promise safety, but it was a distraction, something to focus on other than the dread creeping from the woods. She ran harder, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat of panic. Suddenly, the trees parted, revealing a clearing bathed in pale moonlight. In the center stood the shack, walls weathered and gray, but the light emanated from the open doorway, pulsating like a heartbeat. "Please," she gasped, stumbling to a halt, wild eyes darting around for any signs of movement. Had she truly escaped? With heart pounding a cacophony, she took one cautious step, then another. The door groaned as she nudged it wider, revealing a space cloaked in shadows, save for the relentless beam illuminating the floorboards. There was a chill, or was it just her? It crept up her spine, knitting dread tightly with each passing second. The air was different here, charged. Struggling to catch her breath, she stepped inside. "Sarah," the voice flowed around her, thick and suffocating. Only this time it wasn't from behind. It reverberated inside the shack, echoing from the very walls themselves. She felt a strange pull, a connection to something ancient, something that thrummed in her blood. As she adjusted her gaze, she noticed symbols carved deep into the wooden beams. They twisted and wound as if alive, pulsing with an energy that made her skin tingle. The faint scent of something acrid wafted through the room, and her stomach twisted in response, panic spiking once again. What had the sheriff unleashed? The door slammed shut behind her. She spun around, heart racing. A cold laugh pierced the silence, slithering into her mind. "You've returned, my dear." For a fleeting heartbeat, she recognized the voice. It belonged to Lawson. But this was something darker. A shadow pooled at her feet, swirling like smoke blown from a dying fire. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted, her voice breaking. "What do you want with me?" "Want? Oh, it's far more than that." The voice was smooth, saturated with a sinister glee. "You're part of something much greater now. We need you." The shadows thickened, creeping closer. She backed away until her heels bumped against the wall, realizing there was no escape this time. The symbols flared as if reacting to her fear, hypnotic and demanding. "I want to join you," she screamed, voice trembling but determined. "Too late. You're already ours." The laugh echoed again, mocking and triumphant, drowning out her thoughts. Desperation clawed at her. In the depths of her pocket, she felt the edges of the compass, a relic given to her by her grandmother, supposedly enchanted. If there was ever a moment to test its power, it was now. With trembling hands, she fished it out and held it before her. Its needle spun wildly, then abruptly pointed toward the shadow, as if drawn to it, beckoning. She was met with a sudden silence, a pause that felt heavy with expectancy. Instinct kicked in, and she thrust the compass toward the shadows. "I don't belong to you." The darkness quivered, pulling back slightly. A spine-chilling howl erupted from the shack as the shadows writhed, but then they surged forward like a wave. Sarah braced herself, the weight of an unspeakable terror pressing down on her. "Run!" The voice inside her screamed. Turning on her heel, she darted toward the back exit, heart racing like a jackhammer in her chest. The threshold beckoned. Could she outrun darkness? Or would its slithering tendrils wrap themselves around her forever? The light flickered again, almost tauntingly, as she fled. Was there hope outside, or was she doomed to remain a prisoner, trapped within the madness of the woods? And what of Lawson, or whatever had taken his voice? In the growing silence, she realized she may have only unleashed something worse. The night waited, thick and shrouded, holding its secrets close as she raced toward uncertainty and despair. But even in that chase, the full force of horror had not yet revealed itself. What was lurking at the edge of the woods, whispering her name just beyond the reach of the bright moonlight? Could she escape the fate written long before her arrival? Or would she descend into the very darkness that sought her? The back door was just ahead, but the shadows pressed in on her, thicker and darker than before. Sarah felt their chill pooling around her ankles, slithering, whispering promises she dared not listen to. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, every sense heightened until the very air felt charged, electric with terror. She reached the door, yanking it open, and the cool night air rushed to meet her. But there was no escape. Her foot barely crossed the threshold before the ground beneath her trembled. The earth groaned, and she staggered back, hitting the wall of the shack. Panic set her breath afire. What was happening? The whispers crescendoed, echoing an ancient chant that seemed to ripple through the trees. Sarah's eyes darted around, desperate for a sign, anything to guide her. But the woods stood silent, suffocatingly still, as if holding its breath. "Sarah," the voice coiled around her again, more insistent this time. "You need to accept your fate. You belong to the shadows now." "No. I refuse," she shouted, gripping the compass tightly. It felt warm against her skin, pulsing like a heartbeat of its own. In that moment, she made a choice. This was not merely an object, it was her tether to sanity, the last remnant of her grandmother's love. If it held the power to guide her, she had to let it. She raised the compass high, the needle unwaveringly pointing deeper into the darkness, and let out a primal scream, channeling all her fear and defiance into that singular act. "I choose my own destiny." The shadows recoiled, twisting away from her like smoke caught in a gust of wind. For a heartbeat, silence fell. But then, the earth rumbled again, soft at first, then violent, shaking her to her core. The shack trembled around her, the very foundations groaned under the weight of some unseen force. A crack split the floorboards. Light pierced through, slithering and dancing like fireflies, illuminating the cramped room in ghostly whites and blues. The symbols on the walls flared brightly, revealing their true forms like trapped spirits desperately trying to escape. Then she saw it, a figure looming in the chaos, shifting and writhing. Its eyes glowed red, pinpricks of malevolence that sent ice flooding through her veins. The thing was neither entirely human nor entirely shadow. It ebbed at the edges, constantly shifting, a reflection of the deepest nightmares clawing at her mind. "Come to me, my child," it hissed, a voice laced with silk and poison. "Together, we can reign over the shadows. Embrace your true essence." Desperate, Sarah ripped her gaze from the horror. She needed to move, to decide. Glancing back at the doorway she thought she had nearly reached, she saw the darkness flooding in again, a rush of coldness like a river of despair. "Run! Don't look back!" The words echoed in her ears, the insistence of the compass igniting a spark of courage. With renewed determination, she leaped from the threshold and into the woods, sprinting blindly into the night. Behind her, the shack trembled and crashed to the ground, as though collapsing under the weight of the shadows it had housed. Branches whipped against her skin, pain flaring as she pressed further into the woods. She had to keep running farther than the shadows, farther than the voices. Her heart raced, each beat a painful reminder that she was still alive, still fighting, but the whispers rose again, merging with the sounds of the night, a cacophony of laughter, cries, and her name, echoing like a twisted lullaby. Each footfall felt heavier, the ground pulling at her legs. Fatigue set in, but she forced herself onward. Then, she saw it, a figure waiting just ahead, cloaked in shadow and moonlight. It stood still, body rigid, its face hidden beneath a hood. But it wasn't T. Lawson. It beckoned her with a skeletal hand, motioning toward the depths of the woods, its finger extending into the unknown. An unsettling chill spread through her, and in that moment, she felt the ground shift beneath her once more, something ancient stirring, something worse than she had ever feared. "Will you join us, Sarah?" The figure called, voice smooth and cold like ice. "You cannot deny your destiny any longer. You are one of us." Her choice loomed ahead, the figure remaining still like a statue in the moonlight. Sarah's heart raced. Was this the end? Would she succumb to the darkness, or was there still hope in the shadows? As she hesitated, the laugh rose again, more sinister, cascading through the trees. Whatever was unfolding in those woods was far from over. What lay in the heart of those shadows waited for her to make that fateful choice. The forest was alive with pulsing energy as Sarah staggered forward, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Shadows danced, weaving between trees, their whispers growing into a cacophony of enticing promises and threats. Each step she took felt like wading through a thick fog of dread, and yet, the flicker of determination sparked within her. The cloaked figure, an embodiment of dread, stood quietly in the moonlight, a haunting invitation on its lips. "Join us, Sarah," it beckoned, voice smooth like silk but cutting like ice. A part of her wanted to crumble at the sight, to give in, to surrender to whatever dark fate awaited. But then, there was another part, a louder, fiercer voice within her, a primal instinct roaring. "Not today." She shouted defiantly, shaking her head hard as if to dispel the allure of the darkness that threatened to close around her like a shroud. In that moment, clarity surged through her mind. She thought of her son, the love she bore him, and the life she was fighting to protect. "I want to become what you want," she declared, gripping the compass tighter, feeling its warmth radiate like hope. "I refuse to belong to this nightmare." The whispers around her grew louder, angry, unsettling, a mournful wailing as though mourning an opportunity lost. "You can't escape your destiny." The voice of the cloaked figure thundered, shaking the ground beneath her feet. With a fierce determination, Sarah charged forward, dodging branches that swiped at her, moving deeper into the heart of the relentless woods. The trees seemed to shift, closing ranks as if they conspired against her, but she pressed on, fueled by resolve. "I choose life." She screamed into the woodlands, each word a hammer on the anvil of fear that clung to her heart. And then, in a sudden shift, the dark figures lurking in the periphery began to dissolve, drifting away like smoke swallowed by a rising wind. Each step she took felt lighter, as if the shadows fueling her fears were retreating, frightened of the light within her. But then, out of the darkness, Sheriff Lawson reappeared, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You think you can defy me? You don't understand. You are meant to bring balance, to reclaim the land." His tone dripped with despair, tinged with madness, and for a moment, she faltered, desperate and shaken. Sarah stood her ground. "You're wrong. I want to let you control me. I'm not afraid of your shadows." The air crackled with defiance, and her heart pounded as if willing the darkness to retreat before her. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shivered like a living creature, and Lo was taken aback. The shadows retreated further, sensing something in the air had shifted. The symbols Sarah had seen before, those ancient carvings, now glowed faintly, illuminating the encroaching darkness. With every word of defiance she uttered, every ounce of strength she channeled, the strange light grew brighter, forcing the shadows to recoil. "I claim my truth. I refuse to be bound by fear." Sparks of energy erupted from the compass, intertwining with the light, revealing glimpses of past spirits, of lives lost but not forgotten, swirling within the glow. Lawson's face turned pale, realization washing over him that he was losing control. "No!" he shouted, reaching toward her the last vestige of his power, but it was too late. The pulsating light surged outward, wrapping around Sarah, breaking through the shadow's hold and sending a shockwave of energy through the woods. Everything burst into light. A rush of warmth enveloped her as the darkness howled in protest, swirling into nothingness, the sirens of despair drowned out by the power of truth. And in that moment, Sarah found herself standing in a clearing, the moonlight bright above. The woods that had sought to consume her had transformed, now calm, serene, the terror replaced with an echo of peace. Exhausted but alive, she fell to her knees, grateful tears spilling over as the weight of fear lifted. Cedar Hollow had shown its darkest corners, but she had peeled away the layers, unearthing truths that needed to emerge. Here, memories danced in the light, a promise, a reminder, a mosaic made from the shards of what once was. Every sinister whisper faded like a dormant nightmare, leaving only quiet behind. In that space heaving with history, she finally let herself let go. The shadows had been purged, and in their place, she would build a future for herself, for her son, free from the chains of darkness. As dawn broke, the first rays of light pierced through the trees, each beam a celebration of victory. Sarah stood, wiped the remnants of tears from her cheeks, and whispered to the sky, "Thank you." In the embrace of the soft morning air, she took a step forward into the new day, a survivor, a mother, an unwilling sentinel to the terrible things hidden in the dark. With each step, possibilities unfolded before her, revealing a bright path ahead, but she knew this was not just an end, it was the beginning. Now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that will have you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Trust me, it makes a difference. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I'm dying to hear what you all think. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference, and together we can conquer the darkness.